Endless tasks and empty pockets. That's how I used to feel with my web business. When I first started, I felt like I was so chaotic. Like there were so many tasks coming in from everywhere. Like I had all these clients asking me to do stuff all the time. But for whatever reason, it just wasn't translating into making money. It's like endless tasks, but no money. And it was so frustrating too, because my workflow was wrecking my lifestyle. like I'm working out of my house. Like this is my attic, and I've been working out of my house now for over a decade. And sometimes my wife will text me like, "Hey Lee, it's dinner," and well, I can't come right now. I'm too busy. And so now I'm missing dinner with the family, or maybe I'm working after dinner, or maybe I got to work on the weekends. Like tons and tons of work, not that much money. Why is it? How can that possibly be? And what I want to do today is I want to share with you the 5 steps that I use to break out of that chaotic lifestyle into actually making a lot of money, like well into the 6 figures. In fact, I've used the same framework multiple times myself. I don't really talk about this that much, but I have launched 3 different businesses, all of which have generated over $1 million in revenue. I talk about it in this authority framework video that I'll link you to later. But not even including the web design business. I had a WordPress plugin, an e-commerce platform, and then this DoubleStack coaching business. All of those businesses made over $1 million each. And it's all using this concept called the authority framework, and it works great in the context of web design. I'm going to go through the steps here for you as well, because I don't think the traditional old school web design business model is ever going to be able to get you there. It's broken. It's too old. It's outdated. The reason it doesn't work is not because there's no value in the work. It's because the value is on the wrong thing. The value is on the implementation rather than the results. Because back in the day, the implementation used to be really expensive. Like I have a computer science degree, and back in the day, people used to hire me to do the work, and the work was valuable. But then when the work became less valuable because WordPress themes came out and Wix and Squarespace and all this other stuff came around, what happened was the margins on my work got so thin because I was selling the implementation, not the results. And it's kind of funny. I have 2 friends that are both really interested in they both have like a passion for like cars, like auto racing and stuff. Like I don't really know anything about it. But my one friend Torin was like a single guy, awesome designer, and would just spend all of his extra time and money like enhancing his like street legal race car that he would actually take to racetracks and like race. And then my other friend, who we're all working together, my other friend John, he had a family. He was married and had a couple small kids and everything. But he liked cars too. And so he had a station wagon because of the family and everything, and ended up like enhancing the station wagon with like this big exhaust system and everything. And I feel like John's enhancement to the car is kind of like trying to take the old school web design business and like getting better SOPs and doing better with project management, and somehow thinking that somehow John's station wagon is going to overtake Torin's race car. It's like you got to change cars. You got to change the business model a little bit. And I think the reason for that is because the value is in the margins, not in the work. And what I mean by margin is the money that comes in minus the cost that goes into delivering. So it's sort of like the profit on a project. And the more you can stretch out the margins, the better. But this old school concept of web design is designed, like the business model is structured in such a way that you can't have good margins. In fact, if you ask somebody, like I talk to thousands of web designers, and when I say, how do you figure out what your pricing is? A lot of people say, well, I just figure out what other people are charging and charge a little bit less than that. Or maybe I'll do a little bit more for a little bit less. And so you're putting thin margins on your work on purpose, right? Like you figure, well, what's the bare minimum? Like what's the cost to me to do this work? And then I'll put a thin margin on top, and that's my price, right? So you make thin margins because you put thin margins into the system on purpose, because that's what the business model looks like. That's the old school way of doing it. And I feel like there's 3 major problems that have to be transformed into a new business model to fix it. The first big problem is clients are all over the place. So if you want to increase your margins, it's really helpful if you have a consistent type of client, like a consistent industry or a niche that you've picked or something like that, where you can focus on how to do the work in that space. Because if you don't, then what ends up happening is you get clients from all over the place. And like this totally happened to me too. And they'd be like, hey, Lee, we need you to integrate Salesforce into our CRM or something like that, or we're migrating from Infusionsoft to Salesforce. Can you do that? And then I'd be writing API calls and stuff to try to figure that out. Or when I got into the medical arena, people said, hey, we have these disconnected medical platforms, and I had to learn HL7 data feeds and how to do all that stuff. But I'm constantly learning and seldom reusing. which is the problem with having clients from all over the place. If you're just randomly getting clients and referrals with very little focus on who those clients are in terms of the type of business that they have, then you're constantly learning how to serve new industries rather than reusing the lessons you've already learned. And of course, you don't really charge for the learning part, and that shrinks the margins. The other thing is everything is custom, right? Like it's not reusable, it's custom. And that means it's hard to develop, it takes a long time, and you don't really know what the results are gonna be because you haven't really ever done that before because it's custom. But if you can reuse things, then you can do it faster, there's less risk, and the results are usually better because you're not really doing trial and error anymore. You kind of figured out a system that works. And then the last thing is that the value in the traditional agency tends to be tied to the actual work or the time it takes or something rather than the actual outcome. I was in this Facebook group, man. I'm in this neighborhood Facebook group for where I live. And for some reason, on Mondays, you can post about your business. And last Monday, I was looking in there, and this guy, I think his name is Tim, he said, it was a weird post. He said, hey, business owners, you get what you pay for. I don't want you to be scammed. I charge $150 for a business logo. If you're getting like a $5 logo or like an inexpensive logo, then you get what you pay for, kind of a thing. And that was a weird way to start out a post. But the interesting thing was I start following that thread to figure out, well, why is the logo, like how is he figuring out what the price is? And at one point in the thread, he's like, don't tell me that my 10 years of experience and my graphic design degree isn't worth $150 a logo. And I'm thinking to myself, of course, well, why wouldn't I say that? It's like, how do I know? Maybe you did all that and you still make bad logos, right? It's like, how do you even know? And then another person chimed in and she said that she charges about $70 for a logo, which both of these prices, by the way, I think are really low. But the interesting thing was how they justified the price. And she said it depends on how long it takes and how it's going to be used. And so I'm thinking you don't really believe that. You do not believe that taking longer means charging more. Because if you did believe that, you would never upgrade your computer. Or go get yourself a laptop, install Windows 95 on it, and then try to make the logo, right? If you actually believe that taking longer meant better, then you would never upgrade anything. You would always do it the longest, slowest way possible. Like nobody actually means that. And it was so frustrating to read because these people are just stuck in this old school model of web design and graphic design where they're charging by the hour or something that has very little connection to the actual results the clients get out of their work. And so the 5 steps that I've used in the authority framework, I'm going to send you a link. I'll put a link in the pinned comments or the description or something to link you over to this new workshop that I just put together for all of this. But I want to show you the points right now. The first thing that has shifted my ability to create $1 million businesses has been, number one, pick the audience that you're building something for. And this is especially true in web design. Pick an audience, because if you can pick a niche or an audience, you can then reuse a lot of stuff and learn about what they need. And your marketing will be so much more powerful because you're talking about their problems that you're solving. Whereas if you don't pick a niche, what are you going to say? You're going to say, I do services. I do web design, I do SEO, I do hosting, I do maintenance, all of these different services, which is the same exact things everybody else always says. So then you're like, well, how do I figure out if I should work with you or somebody else? Well, it usually comes down to price. Well, what's the problem with that? I'm going to do a little bit more for a little bit less, and then there's no margins. But if you pick a niche, you can say, I can get you better results. And so now you're basically value pricing your work. And you've disconnected your price from the hours or time or effort or whatever that goes into it. And that's how you really begin to stretch out the margins. So picking a niche is a huge thing. In fact, if you click through this authority framework video that I'm going to link you to in a second, there's a little opt-in in that video. Like if you watch the video like 7 or 8 minutes into it, we start talking about niche mastery is a course that you can get for free. But picking a niche is such a big deal. The second thing is discovering the specific types of outcomes that your niche needs is so important to actually charging the price and getting the value out of the projects that you're looking for. Because if you can say stuff that really pertains to the clients that you're talking to, it makes a huge difference. Here's an example. What if you're working with somebody who does like semi-emergencies type services, like tree services, electricians, plumbers, stuff like that? They want immediate calls for service. They want the phone to ring, talk to me, come out and help me as soon as you can. I don't really have to learn anything about it. Like if a tree falls in my driveway, I don't have to watch a webinar to know that I want it off. And then the faster you can come and take it off, the better, right? So that workflow, that marketing workflow is for that type of industry, for those types of industries. Compare that to somebody who's selling something expensive, like solar panels for your roof or remodeling your kitchen or something like that. Like if I'm going to go buy solar panels, I don't just land on a website and just hope somebody installs $50,000 of solar panels as fast as they can. Like I want to learn about it. I want to know what I'm getting myself into. And do I qualify for any government grants or incentives? And do I need to get batteries or like what can I power? Like I want to learn about stuff. So there's a lead nurturing and qualification, like education and qualification sequence that goes into this, like between the discovery and actually calling to hire the person. There's this educational and qualification lead nurturing sequence that is just not the case with somebody like a tree service. Like I don't need to learn anything about the tree service, where I do need to learn something about like anything that I like the solar panels or health and wellness or financial services tend to have these lead nurturing things in there. And I think it's really important to know about that, because if you can know those two things, you can pick the niche and you can know exactly what kind of outcomes they're looking for, then you can change the type of solution that you offer. So if I was going to work with the solar panel company, I would think, well, I probably should have some kind of a calculator or a quiz or some kind of a lead magnet where people can figure something out. Then I can put them on an email sequence and kind of educate them and qualify them for my offer, and then maybe push them to a call calendar to schedule a call. Whereas if I'm working with the tree service, I don't have to do any of that stuff. Instead, I'm going to be thinking about more like, how do I get these guys more reviews? How do I get them in front of people? How do I get people to show up on Google? Like, just more visibility, more authority, more social proof. Those types of things are going to apply to that other audience. And those are just two examples. That's why picking the niche and discovering the specific outcomes makes such a big deal. And that's what this authority framework video that I'm going to link you to is all about. But then there's a third step. The third step is building the solution that actually delivers the outcomes. So step 1 is picking the niche. Step 2 is figuring out the outcomes. Step 3 is build something that creates the outcomes. Like we were just talking about, the electrician doesn't need the same features as the solar panel guy would. And that's why the solution makes a big difference. And then reuse it, like build it in such a way that you can reuse the solution, you can reuse the proposal, you can reuse everything about it, you can reuse the marketing strategy. That way you begin to stretch the margins. You don't have to relearn that stuff. And now you're really pulling those margins out. And that means you're making a lot more money with much lower cost. And for you and me, most of the time the cost is our time. And so you're spending a lot less time making more money. And that's how you get out of that chaotic, empty pockets situation like we were just talking about, like just endless tasks and empty pockets. But then there's step 4. Like the last 2 steps have to do with getting leads and actually onboarding the clients. The first 3 steps are just sort of laying the foundation for the whole thing. But step 4 is once you have the solution, then you can actually pull out one of the features of your solution that you could offer as a small favor. We talk a lot about small favor marketing, and that's how you figure out the small favor is you look at your solution and say, well, I wonder what I could do that would be relatively easy to deliver. It is helpful as a standalone thing, but it only takes me like 5 minutes to do or something like that. And you pull that small favor out and then you use that to reach out to people. And the conversion rates on small favor marketing are somewhere between like 10 to 30%. That's huge compared to like the 1 to 2% of just a regular cold outreach. And then the 5th and final step is taking those calls and then turning them into paying clients, where you actually go from the small favor to a high ticket client. And you can usually do that in like 1 45-minute call. So that's the overall concept of the authority framework. I'm going to put a link in the description or like the pinned comments or something that'll actually take you to the video so you can actually see the details of how the authority framework works and a lot more like step-by-step instruction and everything. But there's another idea that came up a couple of weeks ago that we talked about where you sell design services on a subscription. And I thought that was kind of interesting. There are a couple of things that I really like about design subscriptions, but I'm not 100% on board. So check out this video right here and you can see what I think about the design subscriptions. I'll see you there.